Hey, what's up? It's Breyonna. So Colourpop just sent me over the brand new Your Gold and Mega palette for summer, and I don't know about you, but this palette just screams hot girl summer to me. Like, just put me on a beach with a fancy drink and a bikini already, because that is like the vibe I get from this one. And this palette though is kind of like a more neutral palette, like it's very like a warm tone neutral. So if you're into those types of colors, you'll probably really enjoy the color story of this one. But what's really fun about this one though too is that we do get some really interesting colors in here. Like we get some corals, we get these like yellowy colors, and also some really funky blues. Now, I don't know if you're like this too, but when I look at this palette, these blues in here just really call to me, and also some like these corally colors like this one right here. So I kind of have like a really cool look I want to do with this palette, and it's going to be like super glam. So the first thing that I'm going to do is prime my eyes using my Anastasia eye primer, and I'm just going to put a little bit on the back of my hand. And to apply it today, I'm just going to use this bigger flat shader brush from Morphe. I'm just going to put a little bit on the brush and then pat it on the eye up to the brow. So the first shade I want to go in with out of this palette is this kind of like matte corally color. I don't know what it is about this one, but I think it looks really pretty in the pan. And this one is called Remote, and in the pan it isn't like a bright coral, it's kind of like a muted one. Ooh, that looks really pigmented, and I'm just going to be taking it on this brush from Luna Magic, and I'm first going to pop it into my crease. I will warn you, in the pan it looks like it's a coral, but when applied it's definitely like a creamsicle orange. And then I'm just taking whatever's left on my brush and kind of like blending it up. You know what, I'm going to do a second layer here real quick. I'm just going to do a third layer. So to me, this shade seems a little bit more on the buildable side. Like right away I thought it was really pigmented, but after doing 3 layers, I would say it does have that slight buildable formula. Like again, like the first layer, it isn't like super sheer, but it doesn't look like it does in the pan right away either. But again, like it's blending out really nice. I'm not having any issues with it. You can see it just looks really nice and smooth. And then I'm also going to just take whatever's left on my brush and kind of like round out this outer edge a little. I'll be honest, I'm going to experiment here, and I'm not too sure if it's going to look good or not, but the next shade we are going to be going in with is this dark blue, and this one's called Sporty. Again, I don't know if this is going to go well or like what's going to happen, but since this orange isn't like a super like crazy orange, it does have like a slight pink tint. I hope that it gives us a little bit like a purpley kind of hue, but I'm just going to be taking it on this brush from Morphe, and this is an M456. Again, I'm a little bit nervous about this, but let's just go in. And I'm just going to be popping this right in my crease. And this is one of those like pinch blending brushes, so I'm just taking it the long way. Okay, so far, I think it's looking good. It's not looking like weird or muddy. I will say right away, the shade is very pigmented too, but I'm just going to go in with a little bit more. And then I'm just using whatever's left on my brush and doing these little circular motions to buff it up. Honestly, like they're actually kind of blending together really well. It's not exactly what I was expecting it to look like, but I don't know, I think it's a little bit different. So now what I'm going to do is take a little bit more of Remote on that brush that we applied it with and go right on the edge. Just to help blend it together a little bit better. And then I'm just going to go in with a little bit more of Sporty. Again, just to bring back a little bit more of like the blue factor. And I'm also going to just take whatever is left on my brush and kind of like pack it on in this outer edge of my lid. And kind of like connect it into the crease. You know what? I need a little bit more on my brush. I don't know, I think it's kind of a vibe. Again, very different for me, but you know, honestly, I think it's always worth trying different things and experimenting, because you don't know until you do it. So I want to do a softer cut crease today, so I'm just going to go right in with the eyeshadow, and I'm going to go in with this really pretty kind of like icy blue, and this one's called Sun's Out. Sun's Out is such a weird name for an icy blue, but you know what, I'm just going to be taking it on this dampened shader brush, and I'm going to place it right in the center of my eye first. You know, that actually looks a little bit more green than I was expecting. You see what I mean though? Like it's not like a true like icy blue. I'm gonna do a second layer. Yeah, you can kind of see it. It's kind of like almost like a bluish minty kind of color. Very sparkly. And I'm just gonna do a third layer just to really get the color on there. And then I'm also gonna slightly bring it up into my crease too. And then overlap it with this outer edge that we just did. But again, like, I was not expecting that color. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that Sporty shade again on that brush that we applied it with, and I'm just gonna pack it right on the edge of that shimmer. So I do want like that cut crease kind of vibe without, you know, the concealer underneath. So I'm just gonna take a little bit on this fine liner brush from Sigma. This is an E10. And I do have the brush dampened. But what I'm going to do is cut my crease using the brush with the shadow. This is one of those tricks I like to do if I want just like a little bit softer of a look. Or if I'm on a time crunch and don't have the time to cut my crease using like an eye primer or concealer. Because it works just as good, it's not as like crisp looking, always. And then for the rest of the lid, I'm just going to go in with this yellow gold shimmer, and this one is called One Way. I'm just going to apply it with a different flat shader brush. And again, I am kind of like cutting my crease with it too. But those look really pretty next to each other. So I'm going to do a second layer, because it's kind of hard to get in this little area. I accidentally grabbed too big of a brush. So I'm just working with what I got. And then I'm just overlapping the two as well. But really, like, that's just a really pretty color combo. I really like these two colors together. They make like a really pretty kind of like greenish gold shade. Okay, I want to add a little bit of spice to this look, so I'm just going to go in with this pressed glitter right here, and this one's called Rum Season, and it's kind of like an iridescent bluish kind of color. And it appears to be a really finely milled glitter. It's not one of those like super chunky kind. And I'm just going to take it right on top of the blue here in the center. That is really cute. And again, when I'm applying it, I'm like pressing it in. I'm not doing a swiping motion because I don't want to disturb the shimmer underneath. But again, it's just adding like a little bit of shine. I'm going to do a second layer though. That's really fun. Again, it's not like one of those like super like chunky and messy kind of pressed glitters. It's just very fine. So if you don't normally like pressed glitters because you don't like the chunky bits and you're afraid of them getting in your eye, I think you would actually really like this one. And then when I get to this outer edge right here, I'm just taking whatever's left on my finger and kind of like tapping it out. So now let's do the lower lash line, and I'm first just going to go in with that dark blue shade that we used on this little tiny shader brush from Morphe. And I'm just going to run it as close as I can to the lash line. I'm kind of doing back and forth motions. I will warn you though, this blue shade is almost close to like a black color. It's not super blue. And I'm just going to do a second layer. You can see it's kind of like a smoky dark blue. Almost kind of like a midnight blue. And what's really interesting about this color though too is that it kind of has like a slight amount of green to it. So I feel like it's going to pair really well with the golds as well in here. And then now I'm just going to take that remote shade, that corally orange on this brush from Profusion. It's an ES6. And I'm just going to run it right underneath to help kind of like smoke it out. And just so it matches the vibe that we have going on the top portion. You don't want a lot on your brush either, just a little bit. Just to give it that orange kind of hue. So for the inner corner highlight, I'm just going to go back in with that One Way shade, that kind of like lighter gold. And I'm just going to pop it really heavy in that inner corner. And I'm just using this brush from Colourpop. It's an E28. It's kind of like a small little blending brush. You know, even though this look isn't necessarily what I had planned, I still think it turned out really pretty. But let's talk about the palette, and I will say the mattes in here, they're actually very easy to work with. And you know, even going from this corally orange into the dark blue, I didn't have any harsh lines or any chunkiness. It was actually very easy to do. The only thing I will say though is that the shadows in here aren't like super crazy pigmented right away. They definitely have a little bit more of a buildable formula, but honestly I think that it really just fits the palette a little bit better because you will be able to do really nice soft natural looks as well as dark smoky eyes. Even though I'm saying that they're a little bit more on the buildable side, the first layer, you know, does have a good amount of pigmentation to it. It just doesn't necessarily look like it does in the pan. So if you want it to look like it does in the pan, you're looking about 3-ish layers, which I personally don't think is bad. I will say though, out of the mattes that I did use today, this dark blue one was a little bit more pigmented. But again, if you do want it to look like it does in the pan, you're looking about 3-ish layers. As for the shimmers in this palette though, wow, like they are just very beautiful. And finish wise, they aren't like a super like extra metallic goodness type, nor are they like a subtle sheen. They're kind of like this wet metallic kind of finish. You know, I'm going to show you what I mean on the back of my hand. I'm just going to swatch the shades that we used today. You can kind of see it on my fingers. Like they just have like this really pretty sheen to them. I will warn you, when you first apply them, they do look a little bit chunky, but if you just kind of like blend them out with your finger, or if you apply them with a brush, you won't have this problem. But you see what I mean though? Like they just have like this really pretty kind of like wet look to them. I'll show you what I mean up close, but you see what I'm talking about? It just has like this wet kind of look to it. And what I really like about this type of formula too is that it does not accentuate fine lines and texture. And lastly, the pressed glitter in here. Now this is a really nice glitter. Again, it's not like a chunky type of glitter. It's definitely very finely milled. Like there is absolutely no chunky bits in it whatsoever. But it actually almost looks like an eyeshadow in the palette because of it. And then, you know, you swatch and you're like, oh hey, this is actually a pressed glitter. But when applied though, it just gives like this really pretty kind of like wet metallic finish to the eye. I know, I just think it looks really nice. And also applying it, it did not get everywhere and it did not give me like any fallout or any issues. And with it not having those chunky bits either, it did not scratch my eyes. Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes with really chunky glitter, sometimes they can irritate the skin of my eyelid, whereas this one did not give me any problems. So when it comes down to would I recommend this palette to you, honestly, I think it's a really nice palette, but again, I don't think the color story of this one is unique. I do feel like I have these colors in other palettes of mine in my collection, so just keep that in mind. If you do have a lot of warm tone palettes, you'll probably have some of these in there. But again, like the formula was really nice. It was very easy to work with, and I had absolutely no issues with any of the shades today. So if you're looking for a really fun, everyday, warm tone summer palette, I think you're gonna really enjoy this one. I gotta say though, after using the It's Golden palette, what I have really noticed is that this palette is extremely similar to my Naked Wild West palette from Urban Decay. I really like this palette, but it is just so pricey. It's like $55. And I mean, again, it's a nice palette, but look at how close this is. Like, keep in mind though, the Colourpop palette does have more shades in it, but like the vibes are very similar. And honestly, I think the quality is really similar between the colors too, so if you want to save some money, definitely get the It's Golden palette. But yeah, so in the comments down below, let me know what you think about this look, and also let me know if you'd like to see more looks using this palette. But as always though, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and also give this video a like. And if you'd like to check me out over on Instagram or TikTok, it's at Breyonna as well. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!